Greetings and welcome to The Dividing Line. We have a very important topic today. There is I guess we'd call it a meme, even though memes have been reduced down to something as small as just a graphic or something like that. But there is a set of arguments going on, similar to back in the 1990s when, I think it was 1990s, may have been a little bit after that, when you had the West Wing episode where the president attacked a Jewish person's views from the scriptures about homosexuality, and it went viral. It went everywhere. I mean, people were repeating this over and over and over again. You still see that even to this day. Last week, or maybe the week before, here on the program, we talked about the TikTok lady. We talked about a video where a woman makes a claim of authority. She claims to have a master's of divinity degree and claims to be able to read Koine Greek and Hebrew and to have translated books of the Bible. And then she presents the exact same information that I'm going to give to you from someone else who claims to be a classics major and also have linguistic capacity. And it's the same material. It's exactly the same material. So it seems to be a meme, a set of assertions, some type of article that is being distributed around the internet. And it is specifically designed to catch individuals in making claims about what the Bible teaches about human sexuality, about homosexuality, and challenging those assertions in the most difficult way to respond to if you do not, in fact, have the background material really well at hand and know what the scriptures teach. And so I think this is very important for our young people, for all of us, but especially our young people, to be aware of today, because hopefully your children are homeschooled or in good, solid Christian schools, but even if they are, they're still going to be challenged by this material. And of course, they need to be passing this on to their children and their children's children and their children's children's children. And so this has to be material that is understood and be able to present it in a confident fashion. So let me look at this material. I'll put it on the screen. This is someone named Fairy Gothmother. Not Callan, at Not Callan is her name. If you challenge her, she will block you immediately. I put one tweet in response that said this is simply, from a scholarly perspective, laughable. And I was blocked within about 2 minutes, I would say, of when I first encountered this. I had to go through the back door to find a way of saving this stuff for you. But I don't talk about my religion much because I don't think that's something you should shove down others' throats. But the Bible has been severely mistranslated to fit bigots' agendas, and that needs to be debunked, a thread. So you shouldn't shove things down people's throats, but I'm going to shove this down your throat by starting with my conclusion that my data will never actually substantiate. So we will not be teaching you how to recognize really, really, really bad arguments in this program specifically, but this is a telltale sign. When you start off with your conclusion is meant to create emotional heat, and you never actually get around to actually substantiating what you asserted, but that's very common in social media today. So for those of you who don't know, I'm a classics major! Exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. I don't know that means she has a degree or anything else, but I'm a classics major. This means I study ancient Greek and Roman religion and the beginnings of Christianity. All original translations of the Bible were in Greek, so that's how we know how to translate it into English. I don't even know what that last sentence is supposed to mean. The Old Testament was written in Hebrew. There are about 12 chapters in Aramaic. The New Testament was written in Koine Greek. So none of the translations of the Bible. Now, okay, I'll take that back. The Greek Septuagint translation of the Old Testament is in Greek. That's true. But you don't have a Greek translation of the Greek New Testament. That doesn't make any sense. So all original translations of the Bible were in Greek, so that's how we know how to translate into English. There's this does not strike me as an individual who really knows what they're talking about, but it's the internet. The problem here is ancient Greek is a difficult language to translate because some words don't appear frequently and can be debated, like the word arsenokoitai. Now, arsenokoitai is the plural of arsenokoites. It's found in 1 Corinthians chapter 6 and 1 Timothy chapter 1 in regards to homosexuality. We'll talk about it more in just a moment. We talked about it last week, but we want to make sure everyone fully understands where this term came from. But again, there's confusion in the statement. This communicates the idea that, well, there's just a lot of words we don't know what they mean. Well, that's not nearly as true of Greek as it is in Hebrew. There are certain terms in the Hebrew language, because of its antiquity, where we don't have any kind of ability to say, oh, here's another language over here, here's another language, this is a cognate term here, a cognate term there. When you're dealing with something that's nearly 3,000 years old, that's of course understandable. But Greek, especially Koine Greek, we have all the papyri, we have many volumes of material that we can go to, and so it's pretty rare to run into a true hapax legomena. Hapax legomena is a term that appears only one time in the body of a piece of literature. So, for example, there are hapax legomena in the New Testament, but almost always you can find them being used outside the New Testament in contemporary Greek literature. So the older the language is, the more difficult that is, because we have just so much less to draw from. Koine Greek, the common Greek of the day of Jesus, not too much of an issue there. Then she says, like the word arsenokoitai, which is what English speakers decided meant homosexual, then in all caps, but it does not. Now, if you're going to say, but it does not, then you're going to surely be prepared to enter into the foundational reasons why it has been translated in that way. And remember, the term homosexual is an English term. What does arsenokoitai mean? It means men with men in bed. It means coitus. It means intercourse between men. And we will demonstrate from the Greek translation of the Old Testament, called the Greek Septuagint, that this is the background behind Paul's words. There really isn't any question about this. This isn't really something to be that can be debated. I'm well aware that there is a tremendous amount of misrepresentation. There's a tremendous amount of literature being produced today that seeks to bring confusion to this subject, but there really isn't any meaningful reason. If it was any other subject than this, no one would really have any problems with it. That's what's important. But she claims, but it does not. So arsenokoitai appeared several times in the Bible, and when making the Revised Standard Version in 1946, because there's lots of different versions for those who don't know, the translators decided to make the word indicated homosexuality to push their own agenda. Now, if you're going to make that kind of claim, then you're going to need to back that up by providing some kind of evidence in the material itself that would document where this bias is coming from, that kind of thing. There are 4 different screenshots, so I need to blow it up so you can see it. All right. So there's their push their own agenda. What is really being described is pedophilia. Now, again, this is very, very common. We dealt with this argument repeatedly in the context of the book that we wrote 20 years ago now. It was written, well, it came out 20 years ago. It's probably written 21 years ago now. Jeff Neal and I wrote The Same-Sex Controversy. And so we deal with this idea in the book. But notice the assertion, what is really being described as pedophilia, a line typically translated as men should not lie with men, for it is abomination, should actually read as men should not lie with young boys, for it is an abomination. Now, immediately we see the depth of ignorance of this particular individual and how bad this information is, which unfortunately the vast majority of people are not going to look to for themselves. But you'll notice that what is being quoted there is from, sort of paraphrastically, from either Leviticus 18 or Leviticus 20. We'll be looking at them in a moment. But that doesn't use the term arsenokoites because that was written in Hebrew. What we will see is that the Greek translation uses arsenos, which means male, and koitain and koimethe to refer to sexual intercourse between males and females, or between males and males in this instance. But that was written in Hebrew. It wasn't written in Greek. She doesn't seem to understand what the sources are. She's either going from memory or just, cutting and pasting. Who knows? I don't know. But there is nothing in the Hebrew or in the Greek of Leviticus 18 or 20 that in any way limits what's being said to little boys or to pedophilia or anything like it. Just simply nothing there at all. That this is a assertion without a foundation. In older translations of the Bible in other languages such as German, now let's stop immediately, and of course the German translation is not an ancient translation. We know that Martin Luther translates the New Testament while he's hiding from the emperor after the Diet of Worms, and so that's what she's making reference to, but that's irrelevant to the issue. Just as the TikTok lady did in the video we looked at last week, irrelevant to the issue. What translations have done that were done 1,500 years after Paul writes 1 Corinthians chapter 6, this plays on the ignorance of the vast majority of the public today as to how translations come into existence, the history of the text, all of these things. People don't know where the Bible came from. They don't know that it was written by 40 different authors over 1,500 years in 3 different languages, and the vast majority of Americans especially have never translated from another language outside of maybe a semester of Spanish or something, or fumbling through at the drive-thru trying to get something ordered, something along those lines. So you can get away with this kind of misrepresentation. What is found in an a German translation, English translation, Italian translation, Latin translation that is done 1,500 years later has interest to historians, but it cannot have any meaningful interest to the actual meaning of the term when the author used it. What did Paul mean when he wrote to the Corinthians? What did Paul mean when he wrote to Timothy? What would those readers have understood as they saw those letters on a piece of papyrus and they saw arsenokoitai and a whole list of sinful behaviors? What would they have understood? In older translations of the Bible in our language, such as German, Martin Luther's 1534 copy to be exact, the word arsenokoitai is translated as Nabenschänder, which literally means boy molester. This didn't change to homosexual in German translations till the 70s or 80s. Well, that is true. It's irrelevant, but it's true. So what did Luther understand? And the more important question is, what was the state of lexical study at the time that Martin Luther is hiding from Charles at the Wartburg Castle in the early 1520s? Because it's 1534 edition. But the New Testament work, primarily, most of his time in translation work after that is done with the Old Testament because it's much longer, much harder, and he's not nearly as good with Hebrew as he was with Greek. But the point is, does the understanding of a particular Augustinian monk in 1534 determine the source of Paul's understanding 1,500 years earlier? No, it does not. It's an interesting fact, but it's obviously being presented as some kind of Luther had access to some ancient element of the language that we don't have today, which is simply not the case. This literally only happened because the company who owns the NIV edition of the Bible paid for the 1983 translation of the German Bible to say homosexual instead of child boy molester. American Bible makers literally paid for propaganda to be made saying homosexuality was bad. Now, again, we saw this last week. Conspiracy theory. Never any foundation, never any substantiation provided whatsoever at all for this kind of assertion. And again, it ignores the reality that terms such as, for example, homosexual is a modern term. And we define it in the modern context. It's English that we're talking about. Us translate the meaning of the ancient text. And so there's this assumption that Bible translators are terrible, horrible people. It's funny. You've got this assertion here. But what's the King James assertion all the time? That the NIV, because of was soft on homosexuality and tried to change the terms. So you've got both sides coming up with some kind of idea of a conspiracy theory without ever providing any foundation for it whatsoever, or even arguing about it. American English versions of the Bible had made this change in 1946 after the 20s and 30s when gay rights groups began to form. People made this change as a political and social opposition to homosexuality since it was still a taboo subject and illegal in most cases. So here's someone who's gone to your local leftist community college and has been fed a line, and they're just simply believing what they've been told by their professors. They don't check it out. They don't go. But you'd have to be able to substantiate that with lexical studies, and you'd have to look at who the translators were and what articles did they write, and what evidence do you have that this is actually what was driving the translation committees, especially the RSV committee and those committees like that. No, you don't have any of that. You just simply, you're making up history as you go. You just like, well, my professor said it, and I just believe my professor. The people who made this change did it to push their own agenda of hate and discrimination. See, that works real well today when you have an entire generation that has now been raised on the idea that everybody in the past was nothing but hate-filled, discriminating bigots. And so this is simply meant to push all of the emotional buttons. But you'll notice so far we haven't had any lexical sources cited. We haven't had anything from antiquity. We haven't had anything that actually makes for meaningful biblical scholarship at all. Because it's quite obvious that the people writing this stuff don't know anything about it or don't care anything about it. Not because it was how it was meant to be translated, which we haven't been told about. They took a difficult word and bent the meaning just enough to fit what they wanted, and then that translation was sent to the masses. And so this is again, it's similar to what you'll find on Facebook or Twitter or places like that, where you end up with this idea of the monks, the monks and they've got their hoods on and they're running around choosing what's supposed to be in the Bible and all the rest of this kind of stuff. So anyway. 1946, a lot of our grandparents were just born or young. Thanks a lot. That was only 20 years before I was born. Less than 20 years. In fact, that's pretty close to you, Rich. Anyways, and this is the translation they grew up with. They, as well as all subsequent generations, have been fed a lie to promote hate. Oh, this is a great conspiracy theory. So you can dismiss anything the Bible says about the subject of sexual morality as based on mistranslation and a culture of hate. That way you don't have to argue this. That way you don't have to do debates. That's why this woman blocked me a matter of minutes after I challenged this silliness, is because they don't do debate. Because this is just all assertion. This isn't argument. We all need to learn all adults, and we need to pass it on to our children. We need to learn how to identify what is an argument and what is merely a string of assertions. Argument follows logic. Argument seeks to make a statement and provide evidence in support of the statement. This is just a bunch of statements, assertions, without any logical conclusion to be made of them at all. The Bible literally says, love all of God's creation no matter how different someone may be from you. I would like to see that, because it says literally. We all know that that's not what literally means today. That term has taken on new meaning. But the Bible literally does not ever say that anywhere. So why would God's book say homosexuality is a sin? It says things like murder are a sin. Oh goodness, wait till they start redefining murder. But how does that equate? It doesn't. It equates it to pedophilia. Now, again, not only is she misspelling pedophilia, but have we seen the only evidence whatsoever that has been presented here that connected what the Bible says to pedophilia was the assertion followed by one German translation done by Martin Luther in 1534. That's it. How about getting out, something called a lexicon? How about looking at the specific verses? No, you don't get any of that. You just have the assertion, because emotions work better with mere assertions than they do with argumentation. Argumentation tends to lessen emotion because it requires your mind to focus upon facts rather than upon feelings. So in our day, that's to be dismissed. You don't want facts, you want feelings. And that's exactly what we're getting here. It's sad that this mistranslation is what everyone seems to know, because it was shoved down everyone's throat, and it gives Christian religion a bad name, because like most other religions, it's not a bad thing. It can be very positive, but the people who misuse it are seen more. Hate and fear are very strong things. Religious text is a great way to spread that, because people wholeheartedly believe what's written down. So if you can convince people something is bad because it comes from the good book, you get people who agree with you more easily. The Bible also doesn't say to hate immigrants or those who look different from you. It says love and accept them as your own. So I literally don't understand how so many Christians find it okay to be racist. You're literally not following your own instruction manual. Anyway, people who try to, notice you got to throw in the whole thing while you're at it. And obviously the Bible specifically does condemn any kind of race-based hatred. The problem is, the biblical definition of racism is not the modern definition of racism. Anyway, people who try to use the Bible or their religion to hurt people and be bigots are not real Christians. So if you don't agree with this, the greatest Bible translating scholar ever to live, then you are just simply a bigot. And we're all seeing this. This is how everything works now. You disagree with me? You're a bigot. That's it. And you need to be fired. I'm going to call your boss and have you fired. Or I'll go on social media and say your company hires bigots. That's how it works now. Total cancel culture. They can't argue their point, but they will cancel you. They just want some kind of high ground and feel like they've got some splendid afterlife. If they were real Christians, they wouldn't be such terrible people. And if you also want references to the places Arson and Koitai has mentioned in the Bible, my sources, including my awesome professors who brought this up to me and are fluent in ancient Greek, or any other info, please DM me. I'm happy to share. Just DM me. And of course, there were all sorts of comments and, oh, this is so wonderful and this is just so great and man, I had no idea and you're so smart and all that kind of rot there. All right.